Okay, looks like we're good to go. All right, everybody. So I'm Bryan Peterson, president of WOHVA, the Washington Off-Highway Vehicle Alliance. I've been a volunteer board member since 2010. I find balancing my real day job with my volunteer duties are sometimes very challenging. I do find that I'm not at work today, so I don't have to have my mask on. So I find that to be pretty cool. I really appreciate the opportunity to present. I'm also joined by Jacob Perry. Well, Jacob Perry is actually one of my board members, but I'm also joined by Byron Stuck. He's a past WOHVA president and our current grant coordinator. And we've got Neil Stamp also from the board. So they're going to try to help me corral some of these questions and get through this. There it is. Okay, so WOHVA is a 501c3. We are Washington State's only organization that represents all four-wheel drive, side-by-side, ATV, and off-road motorcycle users. We strive to be a consistent point of contact for federal and state land managers and elected folks down in Olympia. We are committed to sustainable recreation, trail maintenance, advocacy, and education. As mentioned earlier, I'm also here standing in for the Northwest Motorcycle Association, NMA. I think a lot of you might have met Mark Tenyon. He's the NMA president. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us today. He and his team are very dedicated to the preservation of off-road motorcycling. The NMA is a volunteer nonprofit as well. They're located here in Washington State. The NMA was first formed actually in 1937, I believe, to bring Northwest motorcycle clubs together. And then in '73, they got serious about focusing on land access rights for off-road motorcycles. They've been at the forefront of working to preserve and protect the rights of off-road motorcycling ever since. As a side note, WOHVA, I believe we formed in 2006. So what problem were we trying to solve? So we went into this and we were seeing extreme deterioration of the trail tread. You can see some of here, we've got braiding, submerged trails. If anybody's been out to Tahuya, you'd see lots of water, deferred maintenance, unable to keep up. Creates sustainability and usability problems for multiple use motorized trails across the state. We also saw a lack of consistent points of contact as an issue. I'm assuming some of you folks have also felt the same. You just get to know your Forest Service and DNR contact, and then boom, they get moved, and you're basically starting the conversation over. I'm assuming we might see some more movement with the vax mandates going into effect. So hopefully that's not a big deal. I would also say that on the volunteer side, that's also an issue. I know in speaking with the Cle Elum Ranger District staff, the story that was relayed to me was they know if it's a hiking concern on a trail that they call a WTA, and they've got crews out there ready to rip and trained and staffed and good. Same thing with Evergreen, very organized, very responsive. When it came to the OHV users, the local ranger was great about knowing which club was addressing liberty, and so they knew who to contact there for four-wheel drive issues, or which individual down in Natchez or whatever. We really are trying to bridge that gap. I think WOHVA and NMA looking to be that consistent point of contact. We just found over the years that the turnover causes the process to start over, and you're basically delaying any kind of progress you're going to make. We also were seeing a lack of consistency across landscapes. There's differences in how DNR and Forest Service maybe are approaching a trail system or trail practices. And even between land managers within the same org, you've got different personalities and different approaches to how they are going to conduct their job. That's leading to best practices for trail maintenance being inconsistently applied. We think that there's a need for maybe better defining the differences in between what does a single track motorcycle look for in a trail as far as best practices, what is an ATV user looking for and need, and then even on a four-wheel drive trail. I know did some work up at Evans Creek recently, and I'm finding I'm not trying to move all the rocks off the trail. Like that's part of the challenge as a four-wheel drive user is, can I drive over all that good stuff and have a nice time and still have a sustainable, challenging, trail that's exciting. Also, we're seeing agencies maybe a little slow to adopt practices of new technology. I think you've all seen side-by-side use has exploded. They're selling like hotcakes and definitely bring a different vibe to the four-wheel drive trails than maybe a traditional, flat fender Jeep or Toyota from back in the day. I remember my first one of the WSTC conference in Wenatchee, and I heard people talking about e-bikes, and that was causing quite a stir in the mountain bike community. And if you're paying attention now, you're seeing the motorcycle manufacturers are actually producing fully electric motorcycles as well. In fact, Neil just bought a nice brand new KTM that's fully electric, and he says it's a really great machine. So what did we do? What was our plan? What did we do? Well, WOHVA and NMA, we teamed up. We created heavy maintenance crews, HMCs is what we're calling it. We started these HMCs to tackle the hardest work on public trails, open to WOHV. We use mini excavators, excuse me, and a team of trained trail experts to tackle the most damaged trails, which take the most time and energy to fix. The current workforce we were finding of volunteers and land managers weren't really keeping pace with the work that was needed across the state. Lots of deferred maintenance. We were trying to mitigate any closures that might be coming, or resource concerns or safety issues that weren't being addressed. Getting work done quickly is a key feature of our HMC crew. Plus, the user experience improves and our public trail system is preserved for generations to come. So what did we do here? Each org went after separate RCO funding to support trails with a statewide scope. And you can see here, WOHVA, we focused on all the two-track trails. So we're looking at four-wheel drive, side-by-side ATV, and NMA being the single-track experts, they took on all those trails for them. So benefits, productivity. So thanks to the RCO, we purchased machines that can efficiently do the work. You can see on the bottom right there, WOHVA was able to purchase a brand new Bobcat E32. We got some steel tracks added onto it, a little more robust out in the rough stuff. We had a specialized tilt head that allows the bucket to tilt left and right, so you can really sculpt the trail and get those features you're trying to install very efficiently. NMA has the yellow unit there in the top middle. That's a single track 240, otherwise known as an ST240. It's a pretty slick machine. You can see the operator's riding on it at that point in the picture, but it has a separate remote control set of joysticks that the user can get behind or in front and be able to operate this thing. You can see here in the picture, the tracks are extended in this picture here. They do suck into the machine, so it is no wider than the yellow paint. So it's a really, really unique machine that can run down the single track trails without widening them out. Both of them have obviously thumb, bucket. It's pretty slick. We're estimating that one machine is the equivalent of like 10 volunteers working with hand tools. You can see here it's moving a big rock. That's a nice feature. I also know the NMA, you see a lot of whoops out on the single track trails. They were able to go into, actually it was a multi-use trail, I think near Tongue Mountain possibly, and able to clean out a bunch of whoops that just made it a nice, quick, easy fix that would have taken forever with hand tools alone. We delivered trail design and construction training programs for our heavy equipment operators. We've got, Bobcat certified documentation, brought an expert in, got everybody trained up and certified. We connected with user groups throughout the state, as volunteers, as operators. We asked them for feedback on what trails had the greatest need and really tried to put our effort into those places that they had a lot of concern or love for. So what's gone well? I think the biggest, in talking to Mark and my team, I think the biggest success was we established new, and I'd say very positive relationships with local land managers across the state. We did work in Colville National Forest, Gifford, Okanagan, Wenatchee. I mentioned that we were out at Evans Creek, so that's Mount Baker, Snoqualmie, Tahuya, Capitol, Little Ponderoy even. I know NMA is looking, and I think WOHVA would be as well. We're really looking to strengthen ties with maybe BLM and Fish and Wildlife. I know that the Fish and Wildlife folks have some squares over like in the Natchez area that intermingle with the Forest Service. Really want to make sure we're staying close to you folks and offer our assistance. And we maintain trails. So what do we have planned moving forward? Plan moving forward would be expand, support multiple crews, multiple machines across Washington State. When we rolled this out, each team had a single machine, and we were being pulled in many directions. As soon as everybody heard that we had this program running, we were getting calls left and right saying, "Can you come here? When can you come here? We need you. We need you." So there's a big need out there, and we'd like to have an opportunity to fulfill that. Also see an opportunity to get more OHV groups and clubs involved in the HMC programs. You folks might have been familiar with the Pacific Northwest Four-Wheel Drive Association, as well as NMA. They're members of WOHVA, Northwest UTV. It's a big side-by-side group in the area. Washington ATV Association. Really like to get everybody plugged in. We'd also like to bring best practices sessions to Washington State. So if you're not familiar, there's an outfit nationally known as NOVAC, NOHVCC. That's the National Off-Highway Vehicle Conservation Council. So you see there, they have the Great Trails in the bottom right here. So they have a Great Trails book that talks about best practices for motorized trails. They offer a class that they would come out with their team. And so we were thinking that it'd be great to get land managers, OHV orgs, users, bring them together. And so we can all have a common conversation about what does a best practice look like for four-wheel drive, side-by-side, ATV, single track motorcycle. Also something they're working on. So the Great Trails is pretty thick as a manual. They're working on a field guide, which would be easier to digest when you're out in the field, and you could share it and compare notes at that point. And Jacob would skewer me if I didn't say apply agile trail development practices in the context of OHV use. So he's big on that one. We're ready for it. And also, as far as best practices go, like I mentioned earlier, acknowledging that there's different requirements between the classes of OHVs and the standards need to be established for each. So I was pretty inspired by Evergreen's presentation in Wenatchee on how they evolved their trail building practices, where they started maybe scraping all the duff when they first started, and then they learned that only in certain spots that's required. I thought that was a pretty slick presentation, so thanks for doing that. We also like to build new trails. I could see us working with land managers to build new trail systems. I could see us working with land managers to add new trail mileage. And I could see us adding, rerouting existing trails as needed. I think that's a huge benefit we could provide. And then we could influence the conversation, I believe, for planning for emerging uses. So on dirt, you've got the e-bikes, I mentioned that. You've also got the electric motorcycle here. That's a full-on electric motorcycle, no gas at all. And then side-by-sides, they started small and they're getting pretty big and very capable machines. If you're looking at over the snow, if you hadn't heard, there's recent legislation that allows a tracked side-by-side and a tracked ATV to register as a snowmobile and access the groomed trails. And then obviously I'm a four-wheel drive user at heart, so I have a love for over the snow travel. And it's historically been underrepresented as far as opportunities to get out and have a legal access. Stuff's either closing down for snowmobiles, which is totally fair, but definitely would like to expand snow wheeling opportunities. So how can you help? I would say the biggest thing would be think of us, embrace us, call us. If you help us continue to share our mission, help others understand what we're looking to accomplish, I would say support our grants. Big one would be you have a grant of your own, hire us to do the work. Our HMC teams could do the contract work under your grants. Allow us to fix problems and develop the best fit that the users are going to embrace. And then support our efforts to implement best practices. You can get a hold of us. We're always looking for skilled operators, trail volunteers, WOHVA.org, NMA And then questions. So a couple questions that I might ask the group if you want to choose to respond, or you can hit us with anything you want. But I guess my question is, are we heading in the right direction? Do you have any advice for our organizations? Are there programs out there that we should be looking at to take advantage of? Or what would you do more of or less of?
Yeah, the question regarding preserving adjacent environment, preventing, mitigating erosion as we're doing the trail maintenance, et cetera. A couple things on that. First of all, we're working with the land managers before we even get started on this, and we're only doing trail maintenance. The heavy maintenance crew is really the bottom layer, the heavy, hard, big land moving work that augments what the existing land manager work is already doing regarding maintenance. But the practices, when Bryan mentioned best practices, especially the Novak work, for example, a lot of that is oriented towards preventing and mitigating erosion and all the water handling issues in the first place. That's the whole point of that, is designing trails so that they're not a fix one year, eroded the next year and coming back and having to work it again, but instead working on design issues and water management as the basis so that it creates something that doesn't require continued maintenance. So that'd be my start on that, Bryan and Neil, if you have other comments on that. And Bryan, if you want, I mean, the question here is, can we work together to develop signage for trails and consistency, for example, and including things like trail difficulty? For sure we can. And trail signage hasn't been something that we've worked on yet. It's a piece of our evolution. Keep in mind, this heavy maintenance crew is just one slice of a big pie of working on trails. It's not the beginning design piece. It's not the planning piece. We're not locating new trail, etc. We're working to improve existing trail out there, but the signage and consistency is important. And we've gotten a lot of feedback, and I don't know if people have seen it, but even out on Bryan was showing earlier, the Washington map, there are some first efforts at trying to get trail difficulty identified, and getting into that will be a trick for us. But for right now, there's work that's gone on in that in both the state and federal level, and we've been using some of that locally, but we've not been involved yet on signage, and it is something we see as a need.
And I'll add to that too. Lisa is with the Pacific Northwest Four-Wheel Drive Association. She's the Washington Executive Director. Some of you might have met her. She and I were actually talking about it, her recent trip to Moab. The trails were very well signed at the beginning, but then also out in the trail. And so if you came to an intersection, she described that there was beautiful signage that, you know, says you are here kind of thing, like key points in the trail system where you like, here's a map, this is where you're at, and here's how you get out. And I remember a lot of effort, maybe say at LB in the years past to try to identify, well, this trail is pretty difficult. This is, suggested, equipment to help kind of let folks know what they're getting into.
Yeah, I do want to call out actually Evergreen here with the mountain bike trails, I think have really helped. I know there's some DNR staff here who could probably attest to this, but Tiger Mountain actually has some really good examples of signage with difficulties and routing that I'm hoping we can, adapt for other, not just motorized, but other non-motorized uses. I think would be really useful from a consistency standpoint. So I'm hoping that we can explore that more in the coming years.
So different but related, I would say, you're looking for signage to let folks know what the trail difficulty is. I also would maybe lobby for maybe trail filters at the beginning of the trail. If you can't make it through the beginning filter, then maybe you shouldn't be trying to enter into the rest of the trail. So that might be something we could utilize a little more.
That's been a discussion in both single track and two track, in that idea that the sign isn't just enough. You've got to have some experiential kind of beginning to the trail. So if they can get through that experience, then they get what the rest of the trail might hold in store, because some of these single track trails don't get difficult until you get out to one particular section. And by then you've already several miles in with the turnaround issue, et cetera. So you're too late. So it's a good point.
Yeah, I've seen this used well at Tillamook in my visits down there in Oregon. Any other questions? All right.
Brian, I'm not sure if you saw how long HMC has existed. A little bit of history question.
Yeah, okay, I see that one. The HMC began with our first foray into writing grants. So I mentioned that we sought RCO funding, we bought equipment. That was the beginning of the HMC. We did our first cycle. We were successful this cycle here with getting more grants. So the HMC is continuing to work, and we're excited about that. So really appreciate the support we've had so far.
Brian, one comment I'd make, since we're such a new program,
Mm-hmm.
It's been really great when hearing the earlier presentations and hearing about collaboration. Yvonne, I just highlight you especially. It's been very helpful as newbies on the block here to get some insights into the work that's on a similar basis, not exactly the same clearly, but on a similar basis to what we're planning, and to be able to see, well, here's some of the issues that we've had with staff, here's some of the issues that we've had with financing, here's some of the issues that we've had with working with land managers and trying to get some on the ground learning from the existing organizations. WTA also, thank you very much, so that we could get a faster start and not have to go through those same lessons. We're always listening to land managers, trying to figure out how we can improve things in our own staff, but working with counterparts around the state and to those who we share trails with, it's been real helpful to have that collaboration to help us get started as a new program.
And I'd also like to echo the earlier comment that was made in the last panel about smaller nonprofits having difficulty getting started. The reimbursement through the RCO, that's a tough one. We figured it out, but I could see how that's a barrier in trying to get in. We got one question: is WOHVA promoting machines to eliminate the noise associated with mechanized OHV? I don't know that we're promoting it. I'm saying it's coming. So I don't know what Neil or Byron or Jacob, for that matter.
I mean, I think likely with the advent, Jeep will have a fully electric vehicle in 5 years. They already have a hybrid that has been pretty, actually it's been so successful that they're sold out through this year. And I believe, Neil, I don't know about the single track part, but I would imagine that as we head towards the elimination of ICE machines, at least for new vehicles, it's not an if, it's a when. So as we start looking at emerging technologies there, I'm not sure where our heavy equipment will be helpful as far as like getting infrastructure. I think one of the major challenges that we have is, I know Jeep has talked about, say, in Utah, where there's abundance of sun, of having like solar chargers at the trailhead, and that might work there. But I can think of places here where that type of infrastructure would be quite difficult, because on DNR landscapes there is no power. But it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. From a personal standpoint, I'm excited to see it, because there's some pretty cool things coming down the pipe with electrification.
On that note, as part of the work that's going on, a lot of our membership has been using electric equipment, not gas-powered equipment, for trail maintenance. So the electric chainsaws on the bikes and in the rigs is now common practice, or even electric saber saws. And there's a lot of tree and brushing work that gets done that's as noise or more noise creating than the rigs themselves. And getting that to move to electric is already happening. And that technology, fortunately, is further along than getting a saw to last for 2 hours is further along than getting a machine to last for 30 or 40 miles. But for right now, that's another aspect of this noise issue that crops up, is the maintenance issues with equipment.
I would also add, if you're following SEMA, that's the big automotive expo every year. I believe GM and other Ford as well, they have like drop-in electric motors, so you can pull out your small block Chevy and you drop in this e-motor thing and you can make your car completely electric. I don't know what the ranges on them are. I just know that's heading down that direction. Neil, if you could respond, I'd like to know, what does the range on your new bike get you? Because I know as a single track rider, you can cover upwards of 70 plus miles in a day just on a daily ride. So
yeah, so the new 2021 KTM electric dirt bike, we can get around 30 miles, maybe 40, depending on the trails and conditions. But like you said, typically our rides are 70, 80 miles, sometimes even more, depending on where we're at.
Yeah.
So it does limit the areas that we use those bikes. I wouldn't want to get too far out of the backcountry areas up in the mountains with it. But definitely planning shorter rides, it's definitely a nice feature to have. And it's technology that's still evolving. And just a few years ago, some of the first electric motorcycles that came out, you can get more than an hour and a half to 2 hours out of the ride.
Brian, there's another question regarding, from a Forest Service regional office, the leadership and coordination requirements, and how we've started to begin that work, but how they're asking what additional support would be needed to grow and enhance work that's going on and getting leadership coordination going with the various land managers, users, working crews, etc. Thoughts on that?
yeah, I was just chewing on that one. Well, I mean, the honest answer is, I mentioned this before, I mean, I'm not at my day job, so I could be here with you folks. I think we've gotten this far on the backs of incredible volunteers in many organizations. I think the next step to flipping the switch, turning the corner, would be money. I think we need a full-time presence, somebody that does this for their day job. I know I sit on the Recreate Responsibly Coalition. I'm sitting there having conversations on the side, and I was talking about, I have to get back to work, and they're like, "Oh, I forgot this isn't your day job." I was like, "Well, no, I actually have a real job that I do." So I think for the motorized community, the big key is, it's a huge win for us, I think, to be like trying to be, these points of contact that the Forest Service can reach out. So instead of knowing all the clubs and the individuals that are the engaged folks that are able to make it happen, you can hit WOHVA up. You could hit NMA up, so if it's single track, you go to NMA. If it's a 2-track question, you come to WOHVA. If you come to us, we're still going to say go to the NMA because they're the experts. But I think getting some injection of some funding support where I can get somebody that can be a full-time 7 days a week doing this or whatever the work schedule is would be a huge benefit. Other than that, I would say, like I said in the last slide, one of the last slides, think of us, if you've got a grant that you need heavy maintenance crews for, call us up. We can rent machines, we can bring crews in, and really, make a big impact for you.
I think that's right on. And I really think it's a sensitive question from the Forest Service office that I think they know when they're sitting across the table from us, from any of the motorized users, they're sitting across from someone who really isn't there because it's their job. They're there in spite of their job. And to have that understanding, we can't take that as a whining comment ourselves. We can't use that as our excuse. We're going to help in whatever way we can, and we'll work in our volunteer efforts as best possible. So for right now, those things that can be done to work with us and contract with us especially help us because we can build a bigger base. And again, that's some of the learning that we've gotten from some of the other organizations in the state. And we're just not there yet. We're an all volunteer organization on both WOHVA and NMA side. We are people who are here in spite of our jobs, not because of it.
I would also say, COVID presented many challenges, but I think the one silver lining that I'm taking away is it forced everybody to get online and have meetings with Zoom or Teams. And I found that to be helpful. Instead of trying to drive over to the east side of the mountains to attend a user group meeting, we can just dial in and be part of the conversation. That actually helped quite a bit.
Yeah, I want to tag on to that. I'll do that. Unshare your screen, Bryan. So one of the things I want to tag on to that is having online meetings for statewide, different trails. It's a lot nicer, not to have to drive 4 hours for a 30-minute meeting. And that I'm guessing other groups have had that similar issue. But hopefully when COVID's done, that at least partially will remain. Although I still, longer conferences, I miss those. But those 30-minute meetings being online is quite nice to have.
Well, even the local meetings here, Jacob, trying to get out to the LB meeting, traffic is horrendous where I live. So anything else?
Well, and many of the meetings that happen during the day, like you said, those of us that aren't having paid staff for our organizations, that the meetings during the day, having those online definitely helps us with our organization, where it may not be an issue for other groups that's their full-time job.
Case in point right now.
Yep. Is there anything else, folks?
No.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
When Mark Twain came to me and he mailed and said, "Hey, is there going to be a conference?" And I said, "No, we're going to do a caucus." He said, "Can I participate?" I said, "Please." We've been hearing Jacob had been talking about the HMC at the board meetings for a while, and I know we had conversations in Wenatchee and then at the caucus in Issaquah about various things. And so I was really delighted that we would have you come, and I send my best wishes to Mark and whatever his family emergency was that he couldn't be here, and hope all is well. And thank you, Neil and Byron, for stepping in at the last minute, and Bryan doing both. And I know that the trail builder in my house who builds, that trail there behind me, I'm going to be writing for what those equipment pieces are, because he uses mini excavators, and he's a machine nut. So I will, I'll be asking. We'll do that. But thank you three very, very much, and Jacob for being panelist and host again. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.